So we have now gotten through Matthew chapter 1 all the way through Matthew chapter 4. We've finished the introductory material that is contained in Matthew's gospel, and now we're moving into the heart of what Matthew's trying to say and tell us about the life and the story of Jesus. So Matthew sets up his gospel, and really it's a unique format, and he alternates between, on the one hand, a story, this narrative approach, and on the other hand, discourse or teaching. And it's not a coincidence that this format alternates 5 times back and forth. First with story, then teaching, back to story, teaching, and so on and so forth. What Matthew is trying to do is he's trying to mirror the 5 books of the Pentateuch here. And many of you have already pointed out that one of the things that Matthew is really intent upon is he wants to draw connections with the Old Testament. He wants to help the reader to understand how the story of Jesus ties into the story of the people of Israel. You see, Matthew views the life, the ministry, the death, and the resurrection of Jesus. He sees this as the fulfillment of the story of the people of Israel, and it's the completion of that story. Now, what we call this in theology and in biblical studies is typology. And typology basically means that what Jesus is doing is he is completing, he is finishing, he is of the same type as those who have come before him. And yet, we see in Jesus that he is the completion, the perfection of what has come before him. And so, in Matthew chapter 1, Jesus mirrors the story of Israel. Jesus, his genealogy connects him to the patriarch, Abraham. In Matthew chapter 2, Jesus goes down to Egypt just as the people of Israel, the family of Jacob and all of his children, as they went down to Egypt at the end of the book of Genesis. In Matthew chapter 3, when Jesus comes out of Egypt, he has to go through the waters of baptism, just as the people of Israel had to go through the waters of the Red Sea. In Matthew chapter 4, Jesus goes out into the wilderness, and it's there in the wilderness that Jesus has to wrestle and try to encounter God, just as the people of Israel spent 40 years in the wilderness before they could enter the promised land. And so Matthew's chapter 1 through 4 begin to show us how Jesus is of the same type as the people of Israel. And what we're going to see coming up in chapter 5 tomorrow is the beginning of the first teaching of Jesus. Of course, the famous Sermon on the Mount. And Jesus is going to show us through the sermon how it is that we come to be faithful followers of Jesus, how we can participate in the same type of person that Jesus himself is. So my encouragement to you is to continue reading. You guys are doing a great job of reading every day. I'm loving the comments and the conversations I'm getting to have with so many of you who are joining us for this 28-day Bible reading challenge. My encouragement to you is to just keep going. You're doing great. Keep letting the Spirit of God interact with you and draw connections from other pieces of Scripture together so that you can see how the story of the life of Jesus matters, not only then, but today as well. Happy reading, and I hope you have a great rest of your day today, and we'll check back in with you again tomorrow with Matthew chapter 5.